You can always tell when a canine dog senses something off. It's in the eyes. That look that cuts straight through your calm like a scalpel. And that night, as Rex locked his gaze on the back of the garbage truck, Officer Marcus Webb felt a ripple of dread roll down his spine. The hydraulic whine suddenly stopped. The compactor froze mid-compression. It wasn't the mechanical sound that made Rex bark. It was what lay beneath it, a cry so faint, so fragile it barely registered above the rumbling engine. The garbage truck driver stumbled backward, his face draining of color as the sound pierced the October air again. Rex lunged forward, his graying muzzle pointed directly at the steel jaws that had been seconds away from crushing whatever lay inside. Marcus's radio crackled to life, but he couldn't move. His mind flashed to Sarah's empty nursery, to the yellow walls that had waited 3 years for a child's laughter. "Stop the lift!" Marcus shouted, his voice breaking the spell. Dear God, stop everything. What they found in that compactor would shatter a town's faith forever. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Marcus Webb had seen death in Afghanistan. He'd held dying soldiers in his arms, watched the light fade from young eyes that would never see home again. But nothing had prepared him for the silence that followed his wife Sarah's funeral 3 years ago. The silence of a house built for laughter that would never come. The silence of a nursery painted yellow for a baby who died before drawing breath. At 45, Marcus carried himself like a man who had forgotten how to hope. His shoulders, once squared with military precision, now curved inward as if protecting a wound that wouldn't heal. Each morning he still set 2 coffee cups on the kitchen counter, an old habit from 20 years of marriage. He'd pour Sarah's cup first, watching the steam rise like a prayer, then let it grow cold while he drank his own in the pre-dawn darkness. The second cup always went down the drain untouched, but he couldn't stop making it. "Back in my day, we looked out for each other," he'd whisper to the empty kitchen, echoing words his father had spoken, words that felt hollow now. The house on Maple Street still held Sarah's presence in every corner, her reading glasses on the nightstand, her coffee mug in the sink, the pregnancy books stacked beside the rocking chair they'd bought at an estate sale, dreaming of Sunday mornings spent reading stories to their child. Marcus had learned to navigate around these shrines to his former life, stepping carefully through rooms that felt more like a museum than a home. Rex understood grief in ways that humans couldn't articulate. The 8-year-old German shepherd had his own ghosts. In the mountains of Afghanistan, Rex had been a legend, a detection dog whose nose had saved dozens of lives, whose loyalty to Sergeant Danny Torres had been absolute. Until the day the IED exploded, stealing Danny's life and Rex's left eye in one terrible moment. The dog's remaining brown eye held depths of sorrow that mirrored Marcus's own. Rex's hearing was damaged, his gait slightly uneven from shrapnel still embedded in his hip, but his heart remained that of a protector. They were 2 wounded warriors who had found each other in the aftermath of loss. The Army had retired Rex due to his injuries, and Marcus had taken him in without hesitation. Some nights, when the Pennsylvania rain drummed against the windows, Marcus would find Rex standing guard at the closed door of the nursery, as if protecting something sacred from a world that had already taken too much. The town of Millbrook knew their story. Population 8,000, where everyone's business was everyone else's concern. But grief had a way of creating invisible walls. Neighbors waved politely, but conversations stayed surface level. "How are you holding up, Marcus?" they'd ask, and he'd nod and say, "Fine," because what else was there to say? That he talked to Sarah's photograph each night? That Rex sometimes whimpered in his sleep, probably dreaming of Danny Torres? Tonight's patrol was supposed to be routine, just Marcus and Rex making their rounds, keeping watch over a town that slept peacefully. Until Rex's instincts kicked in and everything changed. The garbage truck's hydraulic system hissed to a stop, leaving an eerie silence that made Marcus's skin crawl. Rex stood rigid beside the massive vehicle, every muscle in his scarred body coiled like a spring. The dog's remaining eye fixed on the compactor with an intensity Marcus hadn't seen since their days dodging roadside bombs in Kandahar. "What's got into your mutt?" The garbage truck driver, a heavy-set man named Carl Brennan, climbed down from his cab with obvious irritation. His fluorescent safety vest caught the streetlight as he approached, clipboard in hand. "I got 6 more streets to cover before my shift ends." Marcus raised his hand apologetically, but Rex refused to budge. The German shepherd's ears were pinned forward, his tail low and still, a posture Marcus recognized from their military days. This wasn't Rex being difficult. This was Rex alerting to danger. "Sorry, Carl. He's usually calm as a church mouse." Something must have spooked him. But even as Marcus spoke the words, he knew they were wrong. Rex wasn't spooked. Rex was focused, professional, working. For the first time in 3 years, the old soldier was back on duty. The truck rumbled forward a few feet, its mechanical arms gripping a large black bin. The moment the hydraulics engaged, Rex erupted. His bark was different now, not the casual warning of a neighborhood dog, but the urgent, chest-rattling alert of a K9 who had found something deadly. The sound echoed off the suburban houses, sharp and desperate. "Jesus Christ!" Carl jumped back, nearly dropping his clipboard. "What the hell is wrong with that dog?" Marcus felt his training kick in, that cold clarity that had kept him alive through 2 tours of duty. He placed a firm hand on Rex's shoulder, feeling the tremor of tension beneath the graying fur. The dog was trying to tell him something, and Marcus had learned long ago to trust Rex's instincts more than his own. The truck's engine gave a guttural roar, and the bin began to rise toward the compactor's waiting jaws. Rex lunged forward, barking with increasing desperation, his claws scraping against the asphalt as Marcus held him back. "Wait!" Marcus shouted, his voice cutting through the mechanical noise. "Stop the lift!" Carl slammed the emergency brake, the sudden silence almost deafening. "What's the problem, officer? I got a schedule to keep." But Rex had already broken free, racing toward the rear of the truck. He stood beneath the suspended bin, barking upward at something only he could detect. Marcus drew his flashlight and approached cautiously, his heart hammering against his ribs. That's when he heard it. It was faint, almost lost beneath the settling groans of the truck's hydraulics, but unmistakable once you knew to listen. A sound that made Marcus's blood freeze in his veins. Not mechanical, not the wind. Something alive, something small, something desperately fragile. A baby's cry. Marcus didn't think. 20 years of military and police training took over. He grabbed the ladder on the truck's rear and hauled himself up, peering into the partially compressed bin. The smell hit him first, the sour reek of garbage mixed with something metallic that he recognized as blood. His flashlight beam cut through the shadows, illuminating layers of trash bags and newspapers. And there, nestled between torn magazines and coffee grounds, wrapped in what looked like a church towel, was the source of the crying. A newborn baby, tiny and blue-lipped, eyes squeezed shut against the cold October air. The child's weak cry fluttered from its lungs like air escaping from a punctured balloon. "Sweet Mother of God," Marcus breathed, his flashlight beam trembling in his hand. Carl scrambled up beside him, took one look, and nearly fell backward off the truck. Is that a baby?" Marcus was already moving, tearing away garbage bags with frantic hands. The infant was hypothermic, skin mottled and cold to the touch, but alive. Miraculously, impossibly alive. 10 more seconds and the compactor would have crushed everything inside into an unrecognizable mass. "Call EMS!" Marcus barked at Carl as he pulled off his police jacket, wrapping the tiny form against his chest. "Tell them we need paramedics for a newborn, hypothermic, possible abandonment." The baby stirred against his warmth, letting out another weak cry that tore through Marcus like a physical blow. He thought of Sarah, of their lost child, of the yellow nursery that had waited 3 years for occupancy. Rex stood beneath them, silent now, his alert posture relaxed into something that looked almost like satisfaction. "You did good, boy," Marcus whispered, cradling the infant as sirens began to wail in the distance. "You did real good." But even as the ambulance lights painted the street in red and blue, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Someone had put this baby in that trash bin. Someone had wrapped it in what looked like a towel from Haven House, Pastor Morrison's orphanage. And someone had counted on the fact that no one would hear a newborn's cry over the roar of a garbage truck. Someone had been very, very wrong about Rex. The emergency room at Millbrook General Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos as paramedics rushed the infant through automatic doors that seemed to exhale whispers of hope and desperation. Marcus followed close behind, Rex padding silently at his side despite hospital regulations. Nobody had the heart to tell a hero dog to wait outside. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the cruel irony of her name wasn't lost on Marcus, took charge immediately. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she examined the tiny patient under warming lights that cast everything in an otherworldly glow. "Premature, probably 36 weeks, she murmured to the nurses. "Core temperature dangerously low, but no obvious signs of drug exposure or physical trauma." Marcus stood in the doorway, watching the medical team work, and felt something crack open inside his chest. The baby's weak cries reminded him of Sarah's voice calling his name from the nursery they'd never filled. Rex seemed to sense his partner's emotional state and pressed closer, the dog's warm bulk a solid anchor in a world that suddenly felt unsteady. "Officer Webb?" Dr. Mitchell appeared at his elbow, her scrubs wrinkled from the emergency. "The baby's going to be fine. Hypothermic, but we caught it in time. Another hour out there." She didn't need to finish the sentence. "Any idea how long he was in that bin?" Marcus asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "Based on his condition, maybe 2 hours, 3 at most. Someone left him recently." She paused, studying Marcus's face. "You saved a life tonight. Both of you." Her eyes dropped to Rex, who had positioned himself between Marcus and the treatment room, as if guarding both the officer and the infant. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of paperwork and questions. Carl Brennan, the garbage truck driver, sat in the waiting room with shaking hands wrapped around a coffee cup, still processing what had almost happened. 30 years I've been doing this route," he kept saying. "Never seen nothing like it. That dog knew. Somehow that dog just knew." Marcus pulled out his phone and called Chief Robert Hayes, dreading the conversation but knowing it was necessary. Hayes had been his superior for 8 years, a gruff man in his late 50s who prided himself on running a clean department in a quiet town. The phone rang twice before Hayes's gravelly voice answered. "Webb? Jesus, it's past midnight. This better be good. Chief, we've got a situation. Found an abandoned newborn in a garbage truck tonight." Rex alerted to it. A long pause. "Abandoned how? Like left on someone's doorstep? Like wrapped in a towel and thrown in with the trash? Would have been compacted if Rex hadn't stopped the truck." Another pause, longer this time. "Christ almighty. The baby okay?" "Alive. Doctors say he'll make it." Marcus hesitated, then pressed on. "Chief, the towel he was wrapped in, it's from Haven House, Morrison's place." The silence stretched so long Marcus thought the call had dropped. When Hayes finally spoke, his voice carried a warning that made Marcus's stomach tighten. "Webb, you better be damn sure about that before you start pointing fingers. Pastor Morrison is a pillar of this community. He's donated more money to local charities than most people make in a lifetime. I'm just telling you what I saw, Chief. What you saw was a towel. Could have come from anywhere. Morrison runs an orphanage, for Christ's sake. He helps kids. He doesn't throw them away. Hayes's tone grew sharper. I don't want you going anywhere near Haven House without talking to me first. You understand? Marcus understood more than Hayes realized. He understood that in Millbrook, some people were considered above suspicion, and Pastor William Morrison was apparently one of them. Copy that, Chief. After ending the call, Marcus returned to the nursery where the baby lay swaddled in hospital blankets, tiny monitors beeping steadily. Rex had somehow convinced the staff to let him stay, and now lay curled on the floor beside the bassinet like a furry guardian angel. The sight should have been heartwarming, but Marcus felt a cold dread settling in his bones. "Beautiful baby," said a voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Pastor Morrison himself approaching, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the late hour, his face arranged in an expression of practiced concern. He wore a dark suit and carried himself with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to being welcomed wherever he went. "Pastor Morrison?" Marcus nodded politely, but Rex's reaction was immediate and unsettling. The dog's ears flattened against his head, and a low growl rumbled from his chest, a sound Marcus hadn't heard since their last deployment. "Officer Webb, isn't it? I heard about your heroic rescue tonight. Praise God you were there when that poor child needed you." Morrison's voice was smooth as honey, but his eyes never quite met Marcus's. Instead, they fixed on the baby with an intensity that made Marcus's skin crawl. "Just doing my job," Marcus replied, keeping his voice neutral while studying Morrison's reaction. "Any idea how one of your towels might have ended up with an abandoned baby?" Morrison's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. "We donate linens to the hospital regularly, officer. Our towels could be anywhere in town. I'm sure it's just a coincidence." He stepped closer to the bassinet, and Rex's growl intensified. "May I?" "Actually," Dr. Mitchell interrupted, appearing with a clipboard, "visiting hours are over. Only immediate family and law enforcement." Morrison's mask of concern slipped for just a moment, revealing something harder underneath. "Of course. I just wanted to offer my prayers for this precious child. We'll be sure to include him in our Sunday service." He turned to leave, then paused. "Officer Webb, if there's anything Haven House can do to help with your investigation, please don't hesitate to ask. We believe in supporting our local heroes." After Morrison left, Rex finally relaxed, but the damage was done. Marcus had seen the dog's reaction to genuine threats too many times to dismiss it. Rex didn't trust Pastor Morrison, and Marcus had learned to trust Rex's instincts more than his own judgment. Something was very wrong in Millbrook, and Marcus was beginning to suspect it started and ended at Haven House. The next morning brought a gray October sky that matched Marcus's mood as he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the Haven House towel sealed in an evidence bag. Rex lay beside his chair, chin resting on his paws, but his one good eye remained alert. The coffee in Marcus's second cup had gone cold again, just like every morning for the past 3 years. His phone buzzed with a text from Chief Hayes. "Baby's been turned over to Children's Services. Case closed pending adoption paperwork. Don't pursue the Morrison angle." Marcus read the message twice, feeling his jaw clench. Case closed? They'd found an abandoned newborn in a garbage truck, and Hayes wanted to call it closed after 12 hours. Something stank worse than week-old fish, and it wasn't just the evidence bag on his table. "Come on, boy," Marcus said, clipping Rex's leash. "Let's take a walk." The neighborhood around Haven House was the kind of place that appeared in tourism brochures about small-town America. White picket fences, oak trees older than the state itself, and houses where 3 generations of families had grown up and grown old. Marcus walked slowly, letting Rex set the pace, watching for anything out of place. Rex stopped suddenly near a storm drain 2 blocks from Haven House, his nose twitching as he sniffed the metal grating. Marcus knelt beside him, peering into the darkness below. The smell hit him immediately. The same metallic scent he'd detected on the towel. Blood. Recent blood. "Find something interesting, officer?" Marcus spun around to find a young woman watching him from behind a chain-link fence. She was Asian American, maybe 16, with dark hair falling across her face like a curtain. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They held the same haunted quality he'd seen in combat veterans, the look of someone who'd witnessed things that shouldn't exist in a civilized world. "Just walking my dog," Marcus replied carefully. "You live around here?" The girl's gaze shifted to Rex, and something in her expression softened. "He's beautiful. What happened to his eye?" "Afghanistan. He's a war hero." Marcus studied her face, noting the way she unconsciously wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive posture he recognized from domestic violence calls. "I'm Marcus Webb. What's your name?" She hesitated so long Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. Finally she whispered, "Lily. Lily Chen." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Lily Chen, one of the children listed in Haven House's adoption records, taken in after her parents died in a house fire 8 years ago. Except she was standing right here, not living with some loving adoptive family as the paperwork claimed. "You know Haven House?" Marcus asked gently. Lily's entire body went rigid. I have to go." She turned toward a small house with peeling paint and broken shutters. "Wait," Marcus called. "Lily, if you need help—" "You can't help me," she said without turning around. "Nobody can help me. Just stay away from that place. For your own good." She disappeared through a side gate, leaving Marcus staring after her with a growing sense of dread. Rex whined softly, pressing against Marcus's leg as if sensing his partner's distress. That afternoon, Marcus drove to the county clerk's office in the next town over, claiming he needed to verify some paperwork for an insurance claim. The elderly clerk, Mrs. Patterson, had known Marcus since he was a boy and didn't question his request for adoption records. "Haven House certainly keeps busy," she commented, pulling file after file from the cabinets. "Pastor Morrison's placed over 30 children in the past decade. Such a blessing for those families who can't have children naturally." Marcus spread the files across a table, Rex lying quietly at his feet, despite the no pets policy. The numbers didn't add up. According to the state records, Morrison had taken in 47 children over 10 years. But only 33 adoption certificates existed. 14 children were simply gone. No records of where they went, who took them, or why the adoptions were never finalized. "Mrs. Patterson," Marcus said carefully, "do you remember any problems with Haven House adoptions? Paperwork issues, complaints, anything like that?" The older woman's face clouded. "Well, there was that business with the Hendricks family 3 years ago. They were supposed to adopt a little girl from Haven House, had already sent the money and everything. Then Pastor Morrison called and said the child had been placed elsewhere. Poor Mrs. Hendricks was heartbroken. She'd already prepared a nursery." "What happened to their money?" "Pastor Morrison said it was non-refundable, part of the facility maintenance fee. Legal said there was nothing they could do." Mrs. Patterson leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between you and me, Marcus, I always thought something was fishy about that whole business, but who am I to question a man of God?" Marcus left the clerk's office with photocopies of the adoption records and a growing certainty that Haven House was hiding something dark. On the drive home, he called his old Army buddy Jake Martinez, now a detective with the Philadelphia Police Department. "Jake, I need a favor. Can you run a background check on someone named William Morrison? He runs an orphanage in Millbrook." Morrison. Yeah, I got him. Clean record, but..." Jake paused. "Huh. That's weird." "What's weird?" His Social Security number. It belonged to a kid who died in 1987, car accident in Ohio when he was 12 years old. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. You're sure? Dead sure. Whoever your Pastor Morrison is, he's been living under a stolen identity for 30 years. That evening, Marcus sat in his car outside Haven House, watching the building through binoculars as darkness fell. The orphanage looked peaceful enough, a large Victorian house with warm lights glowing in the windows, a sign by the front gate proclaiming "Where Hope Lives" in cheerful letters. Rex sat alert in the passenger seat, his one eye fixed on the building. The dog's tension was palpable, every muscle coiled as if ready to spring into action. Marcus had learned to read Rex's body language like a military manual, and right now, every signal screamed danger. Around 9 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. Marcus watched through his binoculars as Morrison emerged from the house, followed by another man Marcus didn't recognize. They loaded something heavy into the trunk, something wrapped in dark plastic that made Marcus's stomach clench with dread. The sedan drove off into the night, and Marcus faced a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could go home, file his report, and let someone else deal with whatever was happening at Haven House. Or he could follow his instincts, trust Rex's judgment, and risk everything to uncover the truth. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me behind the old Miller barn at midnight. Come alone. L. Lily." Somehow she'd gotten his number, and she wanted to meet. Marcus checked his watch. 10:30 p.m. Just enough time to go home and get his service weapon. But as he started the engine, Rex suddenly erupted in frantic barking, pawing at the window toward Haven House. Marcus grabbed his binoculars and focused on the building's second floor. In one of the windows, silhouetted against the light, was the unmistakable figure of a young woman. She was pressing her hands against the glass, and even from this distance Marcus could see her mouth moving in what looked like a desperate scream. The figure disappeared, and the light went out. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. "There are kids still in there." His radio crackled to life, a domestic disturbance call on the other side of town. Marcus stared at the radio, then at Haven House, then at Rex, who was still fixated on that darkened window. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm tied up with another matter. Send Unit 3 to handle the domestic." Marcus turned off his radio and settled back to watch. Whatever was happening inside Haven House, he wasn't leaving until he knew those children were safe. Rex seemed to understand, curling up in the passenger seat but keeping his eye trained on the building. At 11:45, Marcus drove to the Miller barn, an abandoned structure on the outskirts of town where teenagers went to drink beer and pretend they were adults. Lily was waiting in the shadows, wrapped in an oversized hoodie that made her look even younger than her 16 years. "You came," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "You asked me to. Lily, I need to know what's happening at Haven House. I saw someone in the window tonight." "That was probably Sarah," Lily interrupted. "She's 14, been there 2 years. Morrison says she's being prepared for placement, but—" She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself again. "But what?" Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. "But the families that come to look at us. They're not looking for children to love. They're looking for something else. And the money they pay, it's not adoption fees." Marcus felt the world tilt around him. "Lily, are you telling me Morrison is selling children?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I was supposed to be sold when I turned 16 last month. But then—" She placed a hand on her stomach, and Marcus understood with dawning horror. "You're pregnant. Morrison says the baby is defective because of who the father is. He says it needs to be disposed of." Lily looked up at Marcus with eyes full of desperate hope. "But I couldn't let that happen, so I took the baby after I gave birth. and I put him somewhere I thought someone good would find him." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Lily had given birth alone, probably in Haven House's basement. She'd wrapped her newborn in one of Morrison's towels and left him in the garbage, hoping against hope that someone would save him before it was too late. "Lily, who's the father?" Her voice broke completely. "Pastor Morrison. He said it was God's will. He said I was blessed to receive his love." She looked at Rex, who had approached quietly and was now sitting beside her. "But it wasn't love. It was something else. Something terrible." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, a cold fury that reminded him of his worst days in Afghanistan. Morrison wasn't just running an illegal adoption ring, he was systematically abusing children and selling them to the highest bidder, and somehow he'd convinced an entire town that he was a saint. "Lily, how many other children are in that house right now?" 6, maybe 7? They keep us separated so we can't talk to each other, but I know there are others." She grabbed Marcus's arm with desperate strength. "You have to help them. Please. No one else will listen. They all think Morrison is some kind of angel." Marcus looked down at Rex, who was watching Lily with the same protective instincts he'd shown toward the abandoned baby. The dog seemed to understand that this girl was another victim who needed saving. "I'll help," Marcus promised. "But Lily, you can't go back there. It's not safe. I have to. If I disappear, Morrison will know I talked to someone. He'll move the other children, and you'll never find them." She stood up, pulling the hoodie tighter around her small frame. "Give me 3 days. 3 days to get the others ready. Then come for us." Before Marcus could protest, she melted back into the shadows, leaving him alone with Rex and the weight of a truth that could destroy everything he thought he knew about his quiet little town. As they drove home, Marcus's phone rang. Chief Hayes. "Webb? Where the hell are you? I've been trying to reach you for an hour." "Sorry, Chief. Bad reception out here. What's up?" "Morrison called. Says he's getting harassment calls about the baby incident. People are starting to talk, making accusations. I want you to stay away from Haven House and anyone connected to it. That's an order." Marcus stared at the phone, understanding that this was Hayes's way of telling him to back off. But as he looked at Rex, still alert and protective even after their long night, Marcus knew he couldn't walk away. "Copy that, Chief," he lied. "Staying away from Haven House. 3 days." Lily had asked for 3 days to prepare the other children. Marcus just hoped that would be enough time to figure out how to bring down a man the entire town considered untouchable. The next 72 hours crawled by like a death march. Marcus went through the motions of his regular patrol duties while his mind raced with plans and contingencies. Rex seemed to sense the building tension, staying closer than usual and sleeping fitfully at night. Every time Marcus's radio crackled with a call, he expected to hear that something terrible had happened at Haven House. On the second day, Dorothy Hawkins appeared at his front door. Marcus had always thought of Mrs. Hawkins as just another elderly neighbor, a widow in her 70s who kept to herself and maintained the most pristine garden in Millbrook. She stood on his porch holding a casserole dish, looking like every grandmother in every Norman Rockwell painting ever created. But her eyes held a sharpness that made Marcus reconsider his assumptions. "Officer Webb," she said in a voice that carried authority despite her appearance. "I believe we need to talk." Marcus invited her in, noting how Rex immediately positioned himself between Dorothy and the door, not threatening but protective. She set the casserole on his kitchen counter and turned to face him with an expression that belonged on a prosecutor, not a retiree. "I know what you've been investigating," she said without preamble, "and I know you're in over your head." Marcus kept his face neutral. "I'm not sure what you mean, Mrs. Hawkins." She smiled, but it wasn't grandmotherly. "Dorothy, please." "And drop the act, Marcus. I've been watching William Morrison for 20 years. I know exactly what kind of monster he is." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. 20 years? Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out a leather folder that looked official enough to make Marcus's pulse quicken. She flipped it open to reveal an FBI identification card with her photograph and the name Dorothy M. Hawkins, Special Agent. "Retired," she clarified, seeing his expression. "But once Bureau, always Bureau. I moved to Millbrook in 2003 specifically to investigate Morrison. The man you know as Pastor Morrison is actually Vincent Carraway, wanted in connection with 14 missing children across 3 states." Marcus sank into a chair, Rex immediately coming to his side. "Jesus Christ. Why hasn't he been arrested?" "Because he's smart, careful, and he has protection." Dorothy's voice carried the weariness of someone who'd fought this battle for decades. "Local law enforcement, judges, state officials, Morrison's network runs deeper than you can imagine. Every time we get close, evidence disappears or witnesses recant their statements." "Chief Hayes?" Dorothy shook her head. "Hayes is clean, just scared. Morrison has dirt on half the city council and 3 county commissioners." "Your chief knows that going after Morrison means destroying a lot of careers, including his own." Marcus thought about the adoption records, the missing children, the fear in Lily's eyes. What about the FBI? Can't they? "The Bureau's hands are tied without local cooperation. Morrison's been very careful to keep his operations within state lines, and the evidence has always been circumstantial." Dorothy leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Until now, a living witness changes everything. Lily Chen, the girl who left her baby in the garbage truck. Yes, I know about her. I've been monitoring Morrison's communications, illegally I might add. And I know he's planning to move her tonight, along with 6 other children." Marcus shot to his feet. "We have to stop him." "With what? Your word against a respected community leader? My illegally obtained evidence? They'll walk free and disappear forever." Dorothy's expression hardened. "But if we can catch them in the act of transporting children across state lines, that's federal jurisdiction. That's something we can prosecute." The plan Dorothy outlined was dangerous and probably illegal, but it was their only shot. Morrison was planning to move the children to a facility in West Virginia where they would be processed for sale to buyers across the country. The transport was scheduled for 2 a.m. using a modified van with hidden compartments to avoid detection. "I need you to create a distraction," Dorothy explained. "Something that will delay their departure by exactly 20 minutes. That's how long I need to get my FBI contacts in position." Marcus studied the elderly woman who had just revealed herself to be his unlikely ally. "Why should I trust you?" Dorothy reached into her purse again and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 years old, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. "This is Amanda Phillips. She was taken from Morrison's facility in Ohio 15 years ago. She was my granddaughter." The photograph trembled slightly in Dorothy's weathered hands. "Amanda's mother, my daughter Sarah, died in a car accident. I was Amanda's only living relative, but Morrison convinced the court that I was too old to care for her properly. He promised to find her a loving family." Her voice cracked. "Instead, he sold her to a man in California who kept her chained in a basement for 3 years before she died trying to escape." Marcus felt his throat constrict. Another Sarah, another child lost to a system that was supposed to protect the innocent. "I moved here to find proof of what Morrison was doing," Dorothy continued. "But he's been too careful, too protected. Tonight might be our only chance to save those children and stop him from destroying more families." That evening, Marcus sat in his patrol car 2 blocks from Haven House, watching the building through night vision binoculars. Rex lay in the passenger seat, occasionally lifting his head to scan their surroundings. The dog's tension was infectious. and Marcus found himself checking and rechecking his service weapon. At 1:30 a.m., a white panel van pulled into Haven House's rear parking area. Marcus watched as Morrison emerged from the building, followed by two men he didn't recognize. They began loading boxes into the van, supplies for a long journey, Marcus assumed. Then the children appeared. 7 of them, ranging in age from maybe 8 to 16. They moved in single file, silent and obedient in a way that spoke of systematic conditioning. Each child carried a small bag and wore identical gray clothing that looked more like uniforms than personal belongings. Marcus spotted Lily immediately. She was near the end of the line, moving slowly as if every step caused her pain. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the protective way she held her arms around her torso, still recovering from giving birth just days earlier. At exactly 1:50 a.m., Marcus started his patrol car and activated his emergency lights. He drove slowly toward Haven House, giving Dorothy's team time to get into position while creating the distraction they needed. He pulled into the Haven House driveway and got out, Rex at his side. Morrison looked up from the van with an expression of annoyance that quickly morphed into practiced concern. "Officer Webb, what brings you here at this hour?" "Got a report of suspicious activity in the area," Marcus replied, keeping his voice neutral. "Mind if I take a look around?" Morrison's smile never wavered, but Marcus caught the quick glance he exchanged with one of his companions. "Of course not, officer. Though I'm afraid you've caught us at rather an inconvenient time. We're taking some of our children on a weekend retreat to our sister facility in West Virginia." "At 2 in the morning? We like to travel when there's less traffic. Safer for the children, you understand." Morrison gestured toward the van. "Would you like to meet them? They're such wonderful kids." Marcus approached the van, Rex staying close to his left side. The children stood in a neat line beside the vehicle, their faces blank and emotionless. It was like looking at a group of mannequins dressed as children, present but not really there. "Hi there," Marcus said gently to the nearest child, a boy who couldn't have been older than 10. "What's your name?" The boy glanced quickly at Morrison before answering in a monotone voice. "My name is David. I'm very excited about our retreat." Marcus felt his blood chill. The child's response was clearly rehearsed, delivered without any trace of genuine emotion. Rex pressed closer to Marcus's leg, a low whine escaping from the dog's throat. "That's great, David," Marcus replied, then looked at Morrison. "Pastor, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Morrison's mask slipped slightly, but he nodded. "Children, please get in the van. We'll be leaving shortly." As the children filed into the vehicle with mechanical obedience, Marcus led Morrison a few steps away. Rex remained focused on the van, his one good eye tracking every movement. "Pastor, I've been thinking about the baby we found. The one wrapped in your towel." Marcus kept his voice conversational, but he was watching Morrison's reactions carefully. "I'm wondering if you might know more about how that towel ended up with an abandoned infant." Morrison's smile became strained. "Officer, as I explained at the hospital, we donate linens throughout the community. Anyone could have had access to our towels. Funny thing, though," Marcus continued. "The towel wasn't donated. It was still part of your active inventory. Had your Haven House embroidery and everything, very specific piece." For just a moment, Morrison's composure cracked. His eyes went cold and calculating, and Marcus glimpsed the predator hiding behind the pastoral facade. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Officer Webb." "I'm not implying anything," Marcus said. "I'm stating facts, and the facts suggest that someone inside Haven House had direct access to that towel when they wrapped up a newborn baby." Morrison glanced toward the van where his companions were growing visibly agitated. One of them, a thin man with nervous eyes, kept checking his watch and looking toward the road. "Officer Webb," Morrison said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. "I understand you've been through some personal tragedies. The loss of your wife and child was devastating, I'm sure. Sometimes grief can make us see patterns that aren't really there, make us suspect innocent people of terrible things." The mention of Sarah hit Marcus like a slap. "What did you say?" "I'm simply suggesting that perhaps your judgment is being clouded by your own losses. It's understandable, really. A man who couldn't protect his own family might feel compelled to see danger where none exists." Marcus felt Rex tense beside him, the dog responding to his partner's rising anger. "You son of a bitch!" Morrison's smile widened. "Now, officer, there's no need for profanity. I'm simply trying to help you understand that sometimes our hearts lead us astray. Perhaps it would be best if you returned to your patrol and let us continue our journey." That's when Marcus heard it, a muffled sound from inside the van. It was faint but unmistakable once you knew to listen for it. Someone was crying, trying to muffle the sound but unable to completely suppress it. Rex heard it too. The dog's head snapped toward the van, his ears forward and alert. Without warning, Rex began barking. Not the alert bark Marcus was used to, but something deeper and more urgent. The sound of a protector facing imminent danger. "Rex, quiet," Marcus commanded, but the dog ignored him. Rex was focused entirely on the van, barking with increasing intensity. Morrison's facade finally crumbled completely. "Officer Webb, I really must insist that you control your animal and allow us to leave. We have a schedule to keep." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Marcus replied, his hand moving to rest on his service weapon. "I'm going to need to inspect that vehicle." "You have no warrant, no probable cause. I have a police dog alerting to potential danger. That's all the probable cause I need." The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but at that moment, Dorothy's voice crackled over Marcus's radio. "All units, we have federal agents in position. Execute, execute, execute." Suddenly the night exploded with activity. FBI vehicles roared into the Haven House parking lot from 3 directions, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Agents poured out of the cars, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Morrison's companions immediately raised their hands, but Morrison himself stood frozen, staring at Marcus with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You have no idea what you've done," Morrison hissed. "These children need me. I save them from lives of poverty and neglect. I give them purpose." "You sell them," Marcus replied, watching as FBI agents secured the van and began helping the children out. "You abuse them and sell them like livestock." As the agents led Morrison away in handcuffs, Marcus caught sight of Lily being helped from the van by a female agent. She looked fragile and terrified, but when she saw Marcus and Rex, something like hope flickered in her eyes. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. Marcus nodded, feeling a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying begin to lift from his shoulders. But even as he watched Morrison being loaded into a federal vehicle, he knew this was only the beginning. The real work, healing the damage done to these children, would take much longer. Rex pressed against his leg and Marcus reached down to scratch behind the dog's ears. "Good boy," he whispered. "Good boy." The dawn light filtering through Millbrook General Hospital's windows felt different somehow, as if the events of the previous night had altered the very quality of illumination in their small town. Marcus sat in the pediatric waiting area, Rex curled at his feet, both of them exhausted but unable to rest. The 7 children rescued from Haven House were undergoing medical evaluations, and the silence in the hallway was punctuated only by the soft voices of trauma counselors and the gentle beeping of medical equipment. Dr. Sarah Mitchell emerged from one of the examination rooms, her face grave with the weight of what she'd discovered. She approached Marcus with the careful steps of someone carrying devastating news. "How are they?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Physically, they'll recover, Dr. Mitchell replied, settling into the chair beside him. Malnourished, signs of systematic neglect, some evidence of physical abuse. But Marcus, she paused, choosing her words carefully. The psychological damage is extensive. These children have been conditioned to be completely compliant, to never question authority, to believe that love and pain are the same thing. Marcus felt his stomach clench. What about Lily? She's recovering from childbirth complications that should have been treated immediately. If we hadn't found her when we did. Dr. Mitchell shook her head. She's asking for you, actually. Says she wants to thank you properly. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood outside Lily's hospital room, Rex beside him wearing an official therapy dog vest that Dorothy had somehow procured overnight. The girl lay propped up in bed, looking impossibly young against the white hospital linens. When she saw Marcus, tears began streaming down her face. "I thought no one would believe me," she whispered. "Morrison always said that if I told anyone, they'd think I was lying. That people would choose to believe him over a damaged girl like me." Marcus pulled a chair close to her bed, Rex settling on the floor between them. "Lily, you were incredibly brave. What you did, saving your baby, trusting me with the truth, that took more courage than most adults have." "Where is he?" she asked, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. "My baby. Is he okay?" "He's perfect," Marcus assured her. "Strong and healthy. The doctors say he's going to be just fine." He paused, studying her face. "Have you thought about what you want to do? About the future, I mean?" Lily's expression crumpled. "I don't know how to be a mother. Morrison never let us learn normal things. I don't know how to take care of a baby, how to work, how to live in the real world." She looked up at Marcus with desperate eyes. "But I love him. Despite everything that happened, despite how he came to be, I love him so much it hurts." Marcus thought about Sarah, about the nursery that had waited 3 years for a child's laughter, about his empty house and cold coffee cups, about the way Rex had immediately bonded with this broken girl and her innocent baby. "Lily," he said carefully, "what if I told you that you wouldn't have to figure it out alone?" Before she could respond, Dorothy Hawkins appeared in the doorway. She looked tired but satisfied, wearing the expression of someone who had finally seen justice served after decades of waiting. "The FBI finished processing the Haven House facility," Dorothy announced. "What they found—" She shook her head in disgust. "Financial records showing Morrison sold 47 children over 15 years, bank accounts in the Cayman Islands with over $3 million, and a basement room that—" She glanced at Lily and decided not to continue that particular line of description. "What about the buyers?" Marcus asked. "They're rolling up the network as we speak. Arrests in 12 states so far, including some very prominent people who thought their money made them untouchable." Dorothy's voice carried grim satisfaction. "Morrison kept meticulous records. He was planning to write a book about his ministry someday. Arrogant bastard documented his own crimes." Lily had been listening with growing horror. 47 children, she whispered. "All those kids who disappeared over the years. I thought they were just adopted." "You couldn't have known," Dorothy said gently. "Morrison was a master manipulator. He convinced everyone, the children, the community, even some law enforcement, that he was saving those kids from worse fates." "What happens now?" Lily asked. Dorothy exchanged a look with Marcus. "That depends on what you want, honey. You're 16, which means you're still a minor. Normally, you'd go into foster care until you turn 18. Your baby would likely be placed separately, pending adoption proceedings." Lily's face went white. "No, please, don't take him away from me. I know I'm young. I know I don't know how to do this, but please. Or, Marcus interrupted gently, there might be another option. Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a plan that surprised even himself with its audacity. He would apply to become Lily's legal guardian, giving her a stable home environment while she finished high school and learned parenting skills. The baby, whom Lily had decided to name Daniel after the friend Marcus had lost in Afghanistan, would remain with his mother, and they would all figure out this unconventional family arrangement together. "You'd really do that?" Lily asked, her voice thick with emotion. "Take in a broken girl and her baby?" Marcus looked down at Rex, who had positioned himself protectively beside Lily's bed. The old dog's remaining eye was alert and focused, and Marcus could see the same dedication there that had saved so many lives in Afghanistan. Rex had chosen this girl, just as he'd chosen to save her baby, and Marcus had learned long ago to trust Rex's judgment. "Lily, my house has been empty for 3 years. I've been going through the motions of living, but not really living. Sarah, my wife, always wanted children. She'd have loved the idea of giving a young mother and her baby a safe place to heal and grow." Marcus's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "Besides, Rex clearly thinks you belong with us, and I've learned not to argue with him when he makes up his mind about something." The next few hours brought a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and bureaucratic hurdles. But Dorothy's FBI connections and Marcus's standing in the community smoothed the way for what would normally have been a months-long process. By evening, the preliminary guardianship papers were filed and Lily was legally under Marcus's protection. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Lily in a wheelchair holding baby Daniel, Marcus walking beside them with Rex at his side, Dr. Mitchell pulled Marcus aside. "You know this won't be easy," she warned. "Lily has years of trauma to work through. The baby will need constant care. You're taking on a tremendous responsibility." Marcus looked at his unlikely new family, a damaged teenage girl, a newborn baby, and an aging war dog who had somehow brought them all together. It wasn't the life he'd planned, wasn't the family he'd expected to have. But as he watched Lily gently touch her son's cheek with trembling fingers, as he saw Rex position himself protectively beside the wheelchair, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. "Doctor," he said, "I've been carrying around grief for so long, I forgot what it felt like to carry hope instead. This feels right. This feels like what Sarah would have wanted." As they walked toward the hospital exit, Rex suddenly stopped and looked back down the hallway. For just a moment, Marcus could have sworn he saw Sarah standing there, smiling at their little procession with tears of joy in her eyes. When he blinked, the vision was gone, but the feeling of her approval remained. They were going home, all of them, together. 3 weeks into their new life together, Marcus discovered that hope was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the weight of reality. The yellow nursery that had waited empty for 3 years was finally occupied, but baby Daniel's cries in the night often triggered something dark in Lily's traumatized mind. She would wake screaming, convinced that Morrison had found them, that he was coming to take her baby away. The first major crisis came on a Tuesday morning when Marcus found Lily standing in the kitchen at 3 a.m., holding Daniel and staring at a knife on the counter with hollow, terrified eyes. "He told me babies cry to call evil to them," she whispered without looking at Marcus. "He said if Daniel keeps crying, bad people will come. Maybe Daniel would be safer if—" Marcus approached slowly, the way he'd learned to approach explosive devices in Afghanistan. Rex was already at Lily's side, pressing against her legs with the steady pressure that had once calmed panicked soldiers. "Lily, sweetheart, that's not true. Babies cry because that's how they communicate. It's normal. It's healthy." Marcus gently took the knife and put it away, then guided Lily to a chair. Morrison lied to you about everything. He lied about love, about safety, about what babies need. But what if he's right? Lily's voice broke. What if I'm poison to Daniel? What if caring for him makes me like Morrison? The self-doubt that followed was devastating to witness. Lily became terrified of holding her own child, convinced that her touch would somehow contaminate him. She refused to feed him, bathe him, or comfort him when he cried. Marcus found himself taking over all the baby care while Lily retreated into a shell of self-loathing that no amount of professional counseling seemed able to crack. Doctor. Patricia Kellerman, the child psychologist Dorothy had recommended, delivered her assessment with clinical precision that felt like a death sentence. Lily's trauma is deeper than we initially understood. She's exhibiting signs of complex PTSD, severe attachment disorder, and what we call learned helplessness. She may never be able to form a healthy bond with her child. Marcus sat in his living room that night, holding a sleeping Daniel while Rex lay across his feet and Lily stared at the wall from the couch. The weight of what he'd taken on crashed down on him like a collapsing building. He was a 45-year-old widower with no parenting experience, trying to raise a traumatized teenager and her baby while working full-time as a police officer. His phone rang at 2 a.m. 3 days later. It was Chief Hayes, and his voice carried the kind of grim authority that meant someone was dead. "Marcus, I need you to come in. We've got a situation with the Morrison case." The situation, as Hayes explained it, was a nightmare of legal technicalities and corrupt connections that threatened to unravel everything they'd accomplished. Morrison's lawyer had filed a motion claiming that the FBI raid was conducted without proper warrants, that Dorothy's evidence was inadmissible, and that his client was the victim of a vindictive witch hunt. "Judge Coleman is sympathetic to the motion," Hayes said, avoiding Marcus's eyes. "There's talk of throwing out the charges, releasing Morrison on bail pending a new investigation." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "That's impossible. We caught him red-handed with 7 kidnapped children. His lawyer claims the children were willing participants in a religious retreat, says Lily is an unreliable witness due to her mental state, and that her accusations are the fantasies of a disturbed teenager." Hayes rubbed his temples. "Marcus, there's something else. The city council is pressuring me to suspend you pending an internal investigation into your conduct during the arrest." The walls were closing in from all directions. Marcus drove home in a daze, dreading the conversation he'd have to have with Lily. But when he walked through his front door, he found something that stopped him cold. Lily was sitting in the rocking chair Sarah had bought years ago, holding Daniel and singing softly to him. Her voice was broken and off-key, but the baby was calm in her arms, his tiny hand wrapped around her finger. "How long have you been sitting there?" Marcus asked gently. "Since you left," Lily replied without looking up. "I heard him crying, and Rex came to get me. He wouldn't leave me alone until I picked Daniel up." She finally raised her eyes to meet Marcus's, and he saw something different there. Not happiness, exactly, but a flicker of connection. "I remembered something while I was holding him." "What did you remember?" "My mother. Before the fire, before Morrison, she used to sing to me when I had nightmares." Lily's voice grew stronger. "Morrison tried to make me forget her, but she's still here. In my voice, in my hands, when I hold Daniel. He couldn't erase that." Marcus sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the simple miracle of watching a mother bond with her child. But the moment was shattered by his phone ringing. Dorothy, her voice tight with urgency. "Marcus, you need to get Lily and the baby out of town tonight. Morrison made bail 2 hours ago." The words hit like physical blows. "How is that possible?" Judge Coleman expedited the hearing, reduced bail to $2 million, which Morrison's supporters paid immediately. Dorothy's voice was grim. "There's more. 3 of the families who adopted children through Morrison's network have filed for custody of Daniel, claiming Lily is an unfit mother. They're demanding immediate placement pending a competency hearing. Marcus looked at Lily, who was still holding her son and singing softly, unaware that their fragile world was about to collapse again. "Dorothy, what do we do?" "Run. Tonight. I've got a safe house in Montana where you can stay until I can figure out how deep this corruption goes. But Marcus," her voice dropped to a whisper, "if you do this, you'll be fugitives. Your career, your pension, everything you've worked for, it'll all be gone." Marcus stared at the woman and child who had become his family, at Rex who watched over them with unwavering loyalty. He thought about Sarah, about the dreams they'd shared, about the life he'd planned before loss taught him that plans were just another word for hope waiting to be disappointed. But then Daniel made a small sound in his sleep, and Lily smiled, actually smiled, for the first time since Marcus had known her. In that moment, the choice became simple. "Dorothy, how long do we have? The custody orders will be served in the morning. If you're going to go, it has to be now." Marcus stood up, decision crystallizing with military precision. "Lily, we need to talk." When he explained the situation, Lily's fragile smile collapsed into terror. "They're going to take him away from me, just like Morrison said they would." He was right. "No one will ever believe me over people with money and power." "Not if I have anything to say about it," Marcus replied firmly. "Lily, I'm offering you a choice. We can stay here and fight this through the legal system, but that means risking Daniel being placed with one of Morrison's buyer families while the courts sort things out. Or we can disappear tonight, go somewhere safe until Dorothy can expose the rest of the corruption. If we run, what happens to you?" Marcus thought about his badge, his pension, the respect he'd earned over 20 years of service. Then he looked at Rex, who had saved Lily's baby because it was the right thing to do, regardless of the cost. "What happens to me doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you and Daniel safe." Lily was quiet for a long moment, studying her son's sleeping face. When she spoke, her voice was stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. "Morrison stole my childhood, my innocence, my trust in the world, but he didn't steal my love for my son." She looked up at Marcus with fierce determination. "If running is what it takes to protect Daniel, then we run, all of us together." 2 hours later, Marcus's patrol car sat in his driveway for the last time. Inside the house, he moved through rooms filled with memories, packing only essentials into a single bag. He left his badge and gun on the kitchen counter next to a letter of resignation addressed to Chief Hayes. The letter was simple. Sometimes protecting the innocent requires sacrificing everything else. "I regret nothing." In the yellow nursery, Marcus packed Daniel's things while Lily fed him one last time in Sarah's rocking chair. Rex lay across the doorway, alert and protective, understanding that another mission was beginning. "Are you sure about this?" Lily asked as Marcus prepared to carry their bags to Dorothy's waiting car. Marcus looked around the nursery that had finally fulfilled its purpose, at the family that grief and a dog's instincts had brought together. Outside, Dorothy's headlights cut through the darkness, promising sanctuary, but demanding sacrifice. "Lily, 3 weeks ago I was a dead man walking through an empty house, going through the motions of a life that ended when Sarah died. You and Daniel gave me a reason to live again. Rex gave us a miracle. I'm not letting anyone destroy that." As they loaded their few possessions into Dorothy's car, Marcus took one last look at the house where he'd planned to grow old with Sarah. Rex jumped into the back seat beside Lily and Daniel, and Marcus understood that home wasn't a place anymore. Home was the teenage mother singing softly to her baby, the loyal dog who refused to let them face danger alone, and the knowledge that sometimes love means being willing to lose everything to protect what matters most. Dorothy started the engine, and they drove into the darkness, leaving behind everything Marcus had ever known in pursuit of something more valuable than security. The chance for his broken family to heal together, far from the reach of those who would destroy them for profit. As Millbrook's lights faded in the rearview mirror, Daniel began to cry softly, and for the first time Lily comforted him without fear, her voice growing stronger with each lullaby. 1 year later, Marcus stood on the wooden porch of a cabin nestled in the Montana mountains, watching Lily push 18-month-old Daniel on a swing that hung from an ancient oak tree. The morning sun painted everything gold, and for the first time in 4 years, Marcus felt genuinely at peace. Rex lay at his feet, graying muzzle resting on his paws, but his one good eye remained alert, always watching, always protecting. The safe house Dorothy had arranged had become something none of them expected, a real home. The cabin belonged to a retired FBI agent named Thomas Garrett, who had lost his own family to a drunk driver and understood what it meant to rebuild from ashes. He'd welcomed their strange little family without questions, and over the months had become the grandfather figure that Daniel had never known. Lily had blossomed in the mountain air and safety. She'd gotten her GED through online courses, started community college classes in early childhood development, and most importantly, had learned to trust herself as a mother. The transformation was miraculous to witness. The broken, terrified girl had grown into a confident young woman who sang to her son every night and no longer flinched when strangers approached. But Marcus knew their sanctuary couldn't last forever. Dorothy's phone calls had grown more frequent, more urgent. The case against Morrison was falling apart spectacularly, and 3 more children had disappeared from the foster care system in Pennsylvania. The corruption ran deeper than anyone had imagined, reaching into state government and federal agencies. The phone rang inside the cabin, and Marcus felt his stomach clench with familiar dread. These calls never brought good news anymore. "Marcus, it's Dorothy. I need you to sit down for this one." He remained standing, gripping the porch railing as Dorothy's voice carried across the miles. "Morrison's dead. Found in his cell this morning, apparent suicide." But Marcus, before he died, he gave a full confession to his lawyer. Everything. Names, locations, bank accounts, the entire network. Marcus felt the world tilt around him. Why would he confess now? Because he was dying anyway. Terminal cancer, had maybe 3 months left. His lawyer says Morrison wanted to clear his conscience before meeting his maker. Dorothy's voice carried a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The confession names 43 people in the trafficking network, including Judge Coleman, 2 state senators, and a federal prosecutor. What does this mean for us? It means you can come home, Marcus. All charges against you have been dropped. The custody claims for Daniel have been dismissed. Lily's been cleared of any wrongdoing, and the state is offering a substantial settlement for what she endured. Marcus should have felt relief, but instead he felt only uncertainty. Home. The word seemed strange after a year of hiding in the mountains. He looked through the cabin window at Lily helping Daniel stack wooden blocks, while Rex supervised from his favorite spot by the fireplace. "Dorothy, I need to think about this." "Talk to Lily." "Of course. But Marcus, there's something else. The FBI wants to offer you a position as a consultant on child trafficking cases. Your experience with Morrison, your instincts about these situations, they could save a lot of kids." That evening, Marcus sat with Lily on the porch swing while Daniel slept inside, Rex standing guard at the cabin door. The Montana sky was a canvas of stars unlike anything visible in Pennsylvania, and Marcus had grown accustomed to this vast silence broken only by wind through pine trees. "Dorothy says we can go back," he told her gently. "Morrison's dead. The network is being dismantled. We'd be safe." Lily was quiet for a long time, rocking slowly in the swing. "I've been happy here," she finally said. "For the first time in my life, I've been truly happy. Daniel has space to grow up, clean air to breathe, people who care about him without wanting anything in return. But I think about those other children still trapped in the system, the ones Morrison sold, the ones who are still being bought and sold while we sit safe in our mountain paradise." She turned to face him, and Marcus saw steel in her expression that reminded him of Sarah's determination. "I want to help them." Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. "Lily, you're 19 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You don't have to carry the weight of saving every child who—" "Yes, I do," she interrupted firmly. "Not because I have to, but because I can. Because I survived, and that means something. Daniel survived because Rex knew to listen for his cry. We survived because you chose to believe me when no one else would. Now we have to help others survive." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Chief Hayes drove up the mountain road in an unmarked car, accompanied by a woman Marcus didn't recognize. Rex alerted immediately, positioning himself between the approaching vehicles and the cabin. But his posture was watchful rather than aggressive. Hayes looked older, worn down by the events of the past year. "Marcus, it's good to see you alive and well." "Chief." Marcus kept his tone neutral, unsure whether this visit represented opportunity or threat. The woman stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. I worked with Agent Hawkins on the Morrison investigation." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Chen, are you related to—" "Lily is my niece," Agent Chen replied quietly. "My sister, Lily's mother, didn't die in a house fire. She and her husband were murdered by Morrison because they were investigating his operation. Lily was supposed to die too, but Morrison decided she was worth more alive." The revelation shattered everything Lily thought she knew about her past. Marcus found her in the cabin 20 minutes later, sitting on the floor with Daniel in her lap, tears streaming down her face while Rex pressed against her side. "My parents were FBI agents," she whispered. "They were trying to stop Morrison, and he killed them for it. I've been living with my parents' murderer, believing he saved me from the fire." Agent Chen knelt beside her niece, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. "Lily, your parents spent 2 years building a case against Morrison. The evidence they gathered was buried when they died, but Dorothy helped me recover it. Their work, combined with Morrison's confession, has led to the arrests of 73 people involved in child trafficking." "Why didn't you find me sooner?" "We tried. Morrison had you declared dead, created false documentation. It wasn't until Marcus's investigation that we realized you were alive." Agent Chen's voice broke slightly. "I've been looking for you for 8 years. Every day, wondering if you were safe, if you remembered us, if you'd survived whatever hell Morrison put you through." The reunion was everything Marcus had hoped for and feared. Agent Chen was gentle with Lily, patient with her trauma, and immediately smitten with Daniel. But Marcus could see the pull of family loyalty, the desire to know her heritage, to understand where she came from. "I want you to come back to Washington with me," Agent Chen said finally. "I have a house near the academy, plenty of room for you and Daniel. I can help you finish college, help you heal from what Morrison did." Lily looked at Marcus with torn expression. "But what about our family here? What about Rex? What about you? Marcus felt his heart breaking and healing simultaneously. This was what Sarah would have wanted, for Lily to have real family, blood relatives who could give her things he never could. But the thought of losing them, of returning to that empty house in Millbrook, filled him with a grief he thought he'd overcome. Lily, Agent Chen is your family. She can give you opportunities, connections, a future I can't provide. You are my family, Lily said fiercely. You chose to believe me when my own community wouldn't. You gave up everything to keep Daniel and me safe. Rex saved our lives. That's not something you walk away from. Agent Chen watched this exchange with growing understanding. What if there was another option? What if you all came to Washington? Marcus, the FBI position is still available. Lily, you could study at Georgetown while I help with Daniel. We could be a family together, all of us. 3 days later, they loaded their few possessions into a convoy of vehicles for the journey east. Rex rode in the back seat with Daniel, who had grown attached to the old dog and refused to travel any other way. Lily sat beside Marcus in the front, studying a photograph Agent Chen had given her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful and proud to serve their country. "Do you think they'd be proud of me?" Lily asked as they descended from the mountains. Marcus thought about her courage in saving her baby, her determination to help other children, her journey from victim to survivor to advocate. "Lily, I think they'd be amazed by the woman you've become. I think they'd be grateful that their daughter chose love over hatred, hope over despair." As they crossed the Pennsylvania state line, Marcus made a detour he hadn't planned. He drove to Sarah's grave, parked beside the cemetery gate, and walked to her headstone with Rex at his side. The yellow roses he'd planted the year before had bloomed despite his absence, bright spots of color against the gray granite. "I kept my promise," he said quietly to the stone. "I found a family to love. They're not the family we planned, but they're the family we needed." Rex sat beside him, and Marcus could swear the old dog was saying his own goodbye to the woman who had been part of their story from the beginning. When they finally reached Washington, Agent Chen's house was everything she'd promised, spacious, safe, and filled with photographs of the family Lily had lost and found again. That first night, Marcus tucked Daniel into a new crib in a new nursery while Rex took up his familiar position as guardian. "Are you happy?" Lily asked from the doorway. Marcus looked at this young woman who had taught him that family wasn't about blood or law or expectations, but about choosing to love and protect each other despite the cost. "I'm grateful," he replied, "for Rex's instincts, for your courage, for second chances, for all of it." 6 months later, Marcus received a call from Chief Hayes. "Marcus, I thought you'd want to know. The Rex Foundation you established before you left. It's helped place therapy dogs with 47 children rescued from trafficking situations. That old dog of yours is still saving lives, even in retirement." Marcus looked across the yard where Rex was patiently teaching Daniel to throw a tennis ball, the old warrior finding purpose in the simple joy of a toddler's laughter. Lily was studying on the porch, Agent Chen grading FBI trainee exams beside her, and Marcus felt the profound satisfaction of a mission completed. Some families are born, others are forged in crisis, sealed by sacrifice, and blessed by the wisdom of an old dog who never stopped believing that every life was worth saving. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most heartbreaking packages. Marcus thought his story ended when he lost Sarah and their unborn child. Another empty house, another man going through the motions of living while his heart remained buried in the past. How many of us know that feeling? That moment when we realize we're simply existing, not truly living, surrounded by memories of what might have been. But Rex, an old German shepherd with one eye and a warrior's heart, reminded Marcus that heroes come in unexpected forms. When that loyal dog refused to ignore a baby's cry, he didn't just save one life, he saved them all. Lily found her voice, Daniel found safety, and Marcus discovered that family isn't always about blood relations or perfect timing. Sometimes it's about choosing to love broken people back to wholeness, about trusting that there's still purpose in our pain. The most beautiful families are often built from the pieces of shattered dreams, held together by loyalty, sacrifice, and the courage to believe that tomorrow can be different than yesterday. Your story isn't over yet. Have you ever experienced an unexpected Rex moment, when something or someone redirected your life toward a purpose you never saw coming? What would you tell someone who feels like their meaningful chapters are behind them? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your wisdom matters to this community.